The Yonaguni Monument, Japan's sunken mystery we still can't explain. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It truly helps the channel grow and continue to create contents like this. There's a special kind of mystery that sits underwater. Something about the silence, the way the light bends, the feeling that time moves differently down there. It turns every shadow into a question. And if you go far enough southwest in Japan, off the coast of Yonaguni Island, you'll find one of the strangest underwater mysteries on Earth, the Yonaguni Monument. This thing is wild. Imagine diving into perfectly clear blue water, descending just a few meters, and suddenly, this massive geometric structure appears beneath you. Terraces, platforms, steps, straight edges, 90-degree angles, flat walls rising out of the seabed like some kind of sunken temple. It's so crisp, so intentional looking, that your brain immediately goes, okay, who built this, and why is it underwater? But then the counter-thought hits you just as fast. Wait, what if nobody built it? What if this is natural? And that's the real mystery of Yonaguni. It sits right in the middle of that tension, between human creation and natural formation, between archaeology and geology, between myth and science. The more you look at it, the harder it becomes to decide which side of that line it belongs on. Let me paint the picture. The Yonaguni Monument is massive, about 165 feet long, 65 feet wide, and roughly 90 feet tall at its deepest drop. It looks like a stepped pyramid married a ziggurat and then got dropped into the ocean. You've got these wide terraces that look like ceremonial platforms. You've got steps that rise with perfect height consistency. You've got these sharp edges and right angles that just don't feel random. When divers first discovered it in the 1980s, the entire archaeological world freaked out. Because if this thing is man-made, we're talking about a structure that potentially predates known Japanese civilization by thousands of years. Maybe before the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. That would completely rewrite what we know about ancient cultures in that region. It would push the timeline of advanced stonework back into an era when humans supposedly weren't building anything that complex. But here's where it gets interesting. The monument is made of sandstone, and sandstone naturally fractures into straight edges and geometric patterns. Nature, especially under the right conditions, can produce shapes that look deliberately carved. Think about the Giant's Causeway in Ireland or those perfectly hexagonal columns. Sometimes geology just flexes on us. So you've got two camps. One camp says, no way, this structure is too clean, too symmetrical. The steps are too perfect. The platforms look intentional. People built this. And the other camp says, it's just erosion. Calm down. But the truth is, when you look at the images, when you watch divers swim around this thing, it's really hard not to feel that spark. That sense that maybe, just maybe, there's more going on down there than weathering. Take the Grand Staircase. It's one of the monument's most striking features, a wide staircase rising in perfect increments, leading to a massive flat platform. It looks exactly like something you'd see in ancient architecture, except it's underwater. The stairs are evenly spaced, with crisp edges that look carved, not broken. Then there's the triangle pool, a depression cut into a perfect triangular shape, and the Turtle Mound, a formation that looks strangely sculpted, and the road, a long, flat, corridor-like section that looks like a walkway. Divers swim through it like they're exploring a submerged ruin. Some even claim to see carvings or petroglyph-like shapes on the monument. That part is more controversial, because underwater erosion can mimic patterns. But the fact that people even think they might be carvings shows how eerie the place is. Now, one of the most compelling arguments for human involvement is the scale. It's not just one shape. It's multiple shapes connecting into what feels like a planned layout. If it were just one stepped area, maybe geology could easily explain it. But the combination of terraces, pillars, staircases, and platforms all connected, that's where people start raising eyebrows. And then you consider the timing. Around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, sea levels were dramatically lower. Yonaguni Island would have had more exposed land. If a culture did build something there during that period, rising sea levels could have swallowed it whole. That's not a stretch. Similar theories surround structures off the coast of India, the Bahamas, even Malta. But here's the thing. If humans built it, who were they? We have no records of a civilization that advanced in that region from that time. No known architectural style to match it with. No surviving artifacts found directly on the monument itself. And that pushes the mystery into this quiet, exciting space where plausibility and speculation start dancing around each other. But let's step back from the man-made theory for a minute, because nature doing this isn't boring. Nature creating something this geometric is equally fascinating. The ocean off Yonaguni is known for strong currents. The stone there fractures in grid-like patterns. Tectonic movement affects the region. Combine all that, and you actually can get angular formations. The ocean is full of geological surprises. Sometimes nature creates things that look carved. But when you dive the Yonaguni Monument, like physically see it with your own eyes, it hits differently. Divers say the same thing over and over. It feels constructed. That emotional reaction is worth something. Humans are pattern recognition machines. When we see straight lines, flat surfaces, and consistency, our brains gravitate toward intentional design. And that's what makes Yonaguni so addictive as a mystery. It's not obvious. It's not solved. It lives in that tension between two worlds, natural and human, and both explanations feel almost equally unbelievable. Let's lean into the storytelling side of this for a moment. Because in Japan, the local legends of Yonaguni tell of an ancient land, a kingdom that existed long before written history, a land that sank beneath the waves. Sound familiar? It's basically a localized Atlantis myth. And while myths aren't evidence, they often grow from echoes of real events. Imagine a prehistoric community living along the coast during the last ice age. They develop stoneworking skills earlier than we thought. They build terrace structures, gathering sites, maybe even ceremonial plazas. Then sea levels rise as the world warms. The ocean reclaims their architecture. Over thousands of years, the waves reshape it slightly, but the bones of their creation remain. Now imagine a diver thousands of years later, seeing those bones and thinking, "We're not alone in history. There were others, older than we thought." That's powerful, but let's be fair. The geological explanation is strong too. Sandstone is incredibly cooperative when it comes to erosion. Water can slice it like cake. Earthquakes fracture it along clean lines. If you've ever seen naturally formed basalt columns, you know nature can produce architectural-looking geometry. So maybe Yonaguni is just geology being dramatic. But that staircase, that platform, that corridor, these things really push the envelope of what nature can do coincidentally. You start feeling this tug-of-war between your rational brain and your intuitive brain. Rationally, you know nature can form angles. Emotionally, you feel like you're looking at ruins. One detail that gets brought up a lot. There are tool mark-like striations on some surfaces. Lines parallel to each other that resemble scraping or chisel work. Geologists say those could be natural fracture patterns. Archaeologists say they look suspiciously like deliberate shaping. And because the monument is underwater, you can't carbon date the stone itself. You can't measure organic materials that would normally be trapped in the structure. You're left with interpretation. Photographs, dive footage, 3D models, and no absolute answer. The thing that really blows my mind is how calm the structure feels underwater. Like it's been sitting there for thousands of years, completely unbothered by the debates happening above the waterline. There's this eerie tranquility to it. Massive blocks, quiet corridors, sunlight filtering through water in blue beams that hit edges too perfect to dismiss. It feels ancient. It feels intentional. But it also feels alien, not in a UFO sense, but alien to our expectations of human history. Here's a scene I imagine often. Thousands of years ago, long before recorded history, people step onto a terraced platform overlooking the sea. They gather for rituals, for celebrations, for something meaningful that we'll never quite understand. Then slowly, over generations, the ocean rises. First the lower steps are swallowed, then the platform edges, and eventually, the waves erase the entire structure from daily life. Myths are formed, stories are told, then those stories fade, but the stones remain. And now we're here, trying to decode those stones through scuba goggles and modern frameworks. Some divers claim the monument connects to other underwater formations, pillars, walls, pathways, that stretch beyond the main site. If that's true, we might be looking at a complex, not just a single structure. But again, underwater archaeology is hard. Visibility changes, currents shift sand, confirmation is slow. Whatever Yonaguni turns out to be, it's a reminder that we don't have the full map of human history. We have fragments, we have hints, we have mysteries that refuse to resolve themselves neatly. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the point of Yonaguni isn't the answer, but the questions it forces us to ask about human creativity, ancient environments, and the lines between natural and intentional design. Floating there above that massive underwater structure, staring down at something that looks too clean to be nature, and too ancient to fit neatly into our understanding of human history. That's the energy of Yonaguni. It challenges you, it unsettles you, it makes you question what you think you know, because when you really dive into the monument's details, literally and figuratively, it becomes clear that this isn't just one formation. It's a network of shakes, angles, and structures spread across a significant area of the seabed. You have that central step formation, which looks like a terraced pyramid, but around it, you find accompanying features. Channels that look like drainage systems, corridors that feel like walkways, flat plazas, even what some divers call the stage, a huge, rectangular surface that looks like a place where people might have gathered. And the scale is massive. You're not talking about a boulder or two that happen to look squared off. You're talking about multi-story architectural features. It feels like exploring a sunken city, a city with no houses, no temples, no statues, just geometry. Lines and planes that feel deliberate. One of the things divers always talk about is the sense of hidden intention. Even when they acknowledge that nature can erode sandstone into sharp angles, they still come back saying, "Yeah, but this feels arranged." It's the way the lines connect, the way the structures line up, the relationships between platforms and pillars. It doesn't feel random. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about land bridges, sea levels, and the world as it existed thousands of years ago. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, global sea levels were dramatically lower, over 300 feet lower in some regions. Entire coastlines were exposed. Land that is underwater today was once plains, cliffs, forests. Yonaguni may have been part of a much larger landscape, wide enough to support a community. So if people lived there, if they were building structures, they would have built them on land that is now submerged. And here's the kicker. The sea level didn't rise slowly and evenly. Some rises were abrupt. Meltwater pulses, massive, rapid sea level jumps caused by collapsing ice sheets, could have drowned entire coastal regions in a matter of centuries or even less. Imagine building your life along a coastline, only to watch the water slowly claim everything your ancestors constructed. It wouldn't take long for those structures to be abandoned, eroded, and eventually forgotten. That's what gives the Yonaguni Monument its emotional punch. Whether natural or man-made, it is undeniably ancient, and it sits right at the edge of a timeline we rarely explore. The era right before the world we know began, the period when rising seas reshaped human existence. Now, let's talk about theories, because Yonaguni draws theories the way a magnet draws iron filings. The first is the obvious one, the man-made lost civilization theory. This theory suggests the monument is a remnant of a civilization older than anything we currently recognize in Japan. Imagine an early culture, Stone Age, but surprisingly advanced, carving terraces and platforms into coastal cliffs, not building buildings necessarily, but shaping the landscape for ceremonial or communal purposes. The big question, where's the rest of the civilization? Where are the tools, pottery, artifacts? Well, here's the thing. Stone monuments survive, but wood, textiles, and early tools often don't. If the culture lived on what is now the ocean floor, their settlements might be buried beneath centuries of sand, or destroyed by strong currents. We've barely mapped the area. Underwater archaeology is notoriously difficult, especially in places with dangerous currents like Yonaguni. So the absence of artifacts isn't proof of absence, it's just part of the mystery. The natural erosion theory. The more conservative explanation is that Yonaguni is natural, pure geology sculpted by tectonics and erosion, and the geology is compelling. The sandstone there fractures in horizontal and vertical planes. Earthquakes create clean splits. Wave action undercuts ledges. Over time, you get stepped structures, you get sharp edges, you get formations that look like they're designed. If you've ever seen natural formations like the Giant's Causeway or the Cliffs of Moher, you know nature doesn't always play fair. Sometimes natural geometry can fool us completely. But here's the key argument. Nature tends to create patterns, but not entire layouts. And that's what keeps the debate alive. The hybrid theory. This is my personal favorite because it's the most nuanced. The idea is that Yonaguni started as a natural formation, an interesting geometric chunk of stone, but early humans modified it, carved it slightly, shaped it for ritual use. Maybe cut steps into an existing terrace, maybe smoothed out a platform, maybe added channels or altered the shape. It wouldn't require advanced tools, just persistence and simple stone chisels. And that blend, nature providing the skeleton and humans enhancing it, feels plausible. It also fits with what many ancient cultures did. They modified natural features rather than building entirely from scratch. This theory also explains the absence of heavy carving marks. If the foundation was already geometric, they wouldn't need to reshape everything. Now, let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention: the psychological impact of exploring Yonaguni. Divers describe this strange mixture of awe and eeriness. The water amplifies silence. It distorts distance. You approach a corner and suddenly a wall rises like it was built yesterday. You turn again and steps appear beneath you. It feels like walking through a memory. There's also the fact that the surfaces are incredibly smooth, almost too smooth. That's one of the biggest moments. If the ocean has been battering it for thousands of years, why aren't the edges more rounded? Why do some surfaces look freshly cut? Tectonic activity in the region may be the reason. Earth movements can cause fresh shears in the rock, revealing crisp edges even after centuries underwater. Which brings us to the next chapter of this mystery: earthquakes. Yonaguni sits on a seismically active zone. Earthquakes have shaped the region for millennia. Some geologists argue that the monument might have been created, or at least refined, by tectonic shifts, massive slabs of stone breaking cleanly along fault lines. Combine that with erosion, and you get something that looks engineered. But then again, earthquakes don't tend to create staircases. This is where the mystery keeps looping back. Every natural explanation feels right until it doesn't. Every man-made argument feels powerful until you hit a missing piece. And between those two extremes sits the monument itself, silent, immovable, giving nothing away. One thing that fascinates me is how Yonaguni sits culturally. Japan doesn't lean into this mystery the way you might expect. It's not hyped the way Atlantis is hyped in the West. Locals see it with curiosity, but not obsession. And that difference shapes the way the narrative unfolds. But across the world, Yonaguni sparks something deeper. Because underwater ruins tap into one of our oldest collective fears and fascinations: the idea of lost worlds swallowed by the sea, ancient cities buried beneath the waves, civilizations erased by time and tide. Imagine early humans watching sea levels rise, watching the world shrink, coastlines disappear, ancestral lands vanish under waves. That experience would have shaped mythology, spirituality, and culture. And if any structures were built near those edges, they'd be lost to prehistory. So Yonaguni becomes more than a single monument. It becomes a symbol of everything we've lost to the ocean. Now, let's get emotional for a second. Because when you look at Yonaguni long enough, you start thinking about human ambition. What drives people, thousands of years ago or now, to alter landscapes, carve stone, build something that lasts? Why do we insist on leaving marks on the world? The Moai did it. The pyramids did it. Göbekli Tepe did it. Even the Nazca lines did it. Yonaguni, whether carved or not, feels like part of that same human instinct. The instinct to shape the earth, to express meaning, to leave something behind. But maybe Yonaguni is unique because it sits at the threshold between nature and humanity. It makes you ask, what counts as created? If early humans recognized a natural formation as sacred and used it as a ceremonial site, is that not a kind of creation? If they reshaped small parts of it, does that count as architecture? Our ancestors didn't always build temples from scratch. Sometimes they adopted natural formations, mountains, caves, cliffs, and integrated rituals into them. So maybe Yonaguni isn't a city. Maybe it's a sanctuary, a place where nature provided the canvas and humans added the meaning. But even that explanation has gaps, which is perfect because Yonaguni thrives in those gaps. Mysteries survive not because they hide answers, but because they raise better questions. Let me walk you through a moment that divers often describe. You swim upward toward the top edge of the monument. The sunlight hits the rock at an angle that makes every line sharper. The water shifts from dark blue to electric turquoise. Fish rush past you. Your bubbles rise in a shimmering column. And then, as you ascend just a few feet, the whole structure reveals itself in a way it didn't before. Like your brain suddenly connects the shapes into something coherent. You think, this feels intentional. And then you surface. The waves rock you, the wind hits your face, and the island looms in the distance, quiet, rugged, timeless. That contrast between the ancient silence below and the modern world above creates this surreal feeling. You're suspended between eras, between possibilities, between theories that contradict each other but also coexist. Yonaguni is a reminder that the Earth still holds secrets big enough to humble us. We've mapped the moon more thoroughly than our own oceans. We've built skyscrapers taller than anything imagined centuries ago. But underwater, just 80 feet below the surface, an entire mystery has been sitting quietly since before recorded history, waiting. That's the part that always hits me. This monument, natural or not, predates almost everything we call civilization. While humans figured out farming, writing, metalworking, this stone formation sat underwater, untouched, unseen, unconsidered, waiting for divers in the 20th century to rediscover it. It's almost poetic. The monument is patient. Humans are the impatient ones. And maybe that's why Yonaguni has captivated people around the world. It's a puzzle without pressure, a riddle without urgency, a doorway into speculation that doesn't demand a definitive answer. Some mysteries exist to be solved. Others exist to remind us of how much we don't know. Yonaguni is the second kind. Whether it's a lost monument of a forgotten civilization, or nature's greatest architectural illusion, or some hybrid of both, it gives us something rare, a moment of wonder in a world that tries too hard to explain everything. Maybe the truth will eventually surface. Maybe it'll stay submerged forever. But either way, the Yonaguni Monument stands as a silent message beneath the waves, a reminder that history is deeper, stranger, and far more beautiful than we often imagine.